Hello everyone, this is the Pennsylvania and Florida Eastern, back again with another decoder install video. And as you can see right in front of this photo, I do have a Broadway Limited Paragon 4 Dreyfuss Hudson. Now, unfortunately this is going to have to be different than what I usually do. I didn't really have the time or the space to just do a recorded video where I move around the camera and whatnot. So I basically took a bunch of photos of what I'm doing and what I'm going to do next. So please bear with me. This is just how it's going to be. For the time being, I also have another video coming out as well with a Broadway Limited Paragon 3 K4 streamlined locomotive. But right now we're talking about the Dreyfuss Hudson. This is a really nice model by Broadway. The whistle for this in particular is pretty well. However, the motor controls are not really the greatest. It seemed to jitter a bit, and I didn't really like it as much. Especially when, Broadway, whenever they bring their locomotives out, yes, I can always lower down the volume, but Broadway's sounds are just so generic and they don't just feel organic enough compared to, for the likes of TCS WOW, for example, which is basically the decoder swap that I'm going to be doing in this video. I do hardwire DCC installs, mainly TCS WOW 1517 kits. As you can see in the background, there's a TCS wiring diagram for the TCS 1517 WOW 101 steam decoder. So that's what we're going to dive into. As you can see, I have the locomotive out and pretty much separated from the tender. And in the next scene, we're going to take a closer look at the wiring diagram. Alrighty, taking a look at the wiring diagram for the TCS WOW 101 9-pin steam decoder. When you're going to see in the next scene is going to pretty much tell how this is going to happen. So obviously we have right rail plus, V plus is the blue wire, F1 is going to be your green wire, and it's very simple to read. I mean, these are pretty easy to read. I recommend, doing the normal lighting functions for the 9-pin side, especially for the blue, green, white, yellow, and violet wires. If you want to do like a firebox flicker function or something like that, for some reason, I prefer using the brown or pink, which is F3 and F4, and you basically splice the keep alive, and you solder them together with a heat shrink, obviously, back together so that the wire goes to the lighting function for the positive for function 3 or function 4. Normally, I only really do like 3 functions. I don't really add like a 4th function or something like that. I don't do any roads that use a Mars light, especially for steam engines. So really, it's only headlight, rear headlight, cab light if it already has a cab light, or if it doesn't. I'm not sure if I'm gonna ever do a cab light like from stock install, but most likely I'm gonna do a firebox install. And if there's marker lights available on the locomotive, I'll do marker lights. However, in this build, there's only a forward and reverse marker light on this Paragon 4 Dreyfuss Hudson, and it's a brass hybrid, which is strange because you would think that the brass hybrid Dreyfuss Hudson would have more, but in this case we don't. So in the next scene, we're gonna look on the other side. All right, so now we got the underside of the locomotive. You can see that the main screws in question are going to be right under where my fingers are holding the pilot truck. There's a screw under there pretty much near where the ladders are, in between where the ladders are to get to the side railings of the locomotive. We're not going to open up the bottom of the locomotive. There's no reason to get into the gearbox or anything like that. So most likely I will either take off the rear trailing truck of the locomotive, and really I don't really move the pilot truck. You don't really necessarily have to remove either of them. Actually, it's really easy to access the 3 screws under this locomotive, so if you want to, that's totally up to you, but I'm just pointing this out, what it looks like on the bottom of the locomotive. It's really simple, run-of-the-mill Broadway stuff. Alrighty, so As you can see, it's a really different change in transition. So if you see that, metal cylinder that's coming up near the front by the pilot, that's one of the screw points, and you can't really see where the other screw points are for the locomotive shell, but it's near towards the back, near where the water pumps are and the blowdown pipes are. Basically near under the cab of the locomotive. You can barely see, that there is a screw hole right there. You can't see the other one because the angle is different. But yeah, this is what you're going to see in the side of the locomotive. There's a nice can motor there. I can't really tell if it's a 3-pole or 5-pole, and it looks very similar to another project that I'll be doing a future video on. But as you can see, there's a bunch of wires going into the boiler and up front. And right there, as you can see, I took one of the screws out for the weight that's inside the boiler, and there's another screw that's almost out as well. I'm going to be gutting out the smoke unit because I personally don't really need it. It's not really necessary, and not only that, I can't even use it. In TCS, they don't really have a smoke unit function, so unfortunately, I can't really use it. But at the same time, it gets rid of a liability and a potential, reliability hazard. So that's another reason why I'm going to get rid of it. To me, it's just a gimmick, but, I digress. It's something you have to do. It's not really complicated. As you can see at the back of the locomotive, behind the can motor, there is the board that will be of question that we're going to look at in a bit, where it will basically tell you where each wire goes to. And from there, you just go from that PCB board and you figure out where each wire goes to. Now, obviously, I'm not going to move around the motor left and the motor minus or motor plus wires. They're pretty much intuitive, but that will very much help you when you're working in the tender on which wire goes to which. And to be honest, this is pretty much the meat of where you're going to figure out what each wire goes to, is that board with all that white legible detail on the back. Alrighty, so now we're going to take a closer look at that board right there. You can zoom in if you want. As you can see, the top pin is track right, and then the one below that is motor minus. Then the next one below that is plus 3.3 volt. That's going to be where your blue wire is going to go for all your lighting functions. And then the next one over there is SENS. Sorry for the pause there, but that's for basically the sensor for the locomotive that do the chuff sensing. But you're not going to need that anymore, so you can probably use that as one of the grounding wires that will go back into the 9-pin board for a lighting function. And then the 5th pin under is GND. That's going to be for the white wire for your headlight. It's the easiest one to remember since a lot of Broadways pretty much use this format. And then below that is another one. It's another sensor or something like that. It's, again, you can use it for a lighting function also. And then below that is motor plus, which is the 7th pin. And then the 8th pin is going to be your track left. Now in the tender, the track left is most likely going to be the black wire, and then the track right is usually the gray wire. How can you tell us? Well, all you have to do, depending on the locomotive, in this case, you don't really see it that much, but usually track right is a given based off of the pins. But in this case, track right is usually, you can basically tell by looking under your tender as well to tell which wheels pick up for the right rail or left rail. So that will also help you. It's really intuitive. Just remember to put some thought into it. If you're stuck, just check. Just look on your tenders to figure out which wire goes to right rail and which one goes to left rail. But that's what you want to do first, to check which is right rail first and which is left rail. Check for a continuity test. And then after that, what you're going to want to do is to make sure that, when you do motor plus and motor minus, all right, you want to wire those up as well. And then, to test again before you start doing lighting functions. Okay, so the first thing I did is that I pretty much finished what I was going to do in the beginning, is take the weight out and take the smoke unit out. Now that smoke unit's, I guess, pan or something that directs all the fluid down the funnel into the smoke generator itself. I don't know what that is. I I have a couple other smoke units. As you can see in the top left corner, there's another older smoke unit that came off of a Paragon 3 J1. Broadway seems to be doing different things, but the general, below that piece that funnels the stuff, the smoke fluid down, it's pretty much the same thing. I can't really tell exactly on the outside what is the difference. They pretty much are the same thing. They never really changed them. I used to have a Paragon 2 version as well, but I gave that to a friend along with its board for the H10 project that I was working on. So, yeah, the smoke units, Broadway smoke units, they are really interesting. They're nice and gimmicky, but when they fail, it is a pain in the butt, and it's a very big letdown. In front of the smoke unit, we have the LED. Now, really, I just want to take the smoke unit out, take all that wiring junk, and just gut it. That's all going to go. If you see what the multiple boards with all those JST plugs are, that's all going to be taken off, and including that cable. So what's going to be left is basically just a plus and minus wire for the headlight, really. I don't really need any of that other stuff. I'll probably sell it if anybody wants it for whatever reason they want, or for spare parts or whatever, if they still want to use, Paragon. But in this video, we're just doing a TCS WOW install, and this is just part of the process. There's a lot of junking, especially if it's a smoke unit locomotive. So, yeah, that's what I'm doing in this scene. That's pretty much what's going on. I'll see you guys in the next part where we look under the tender. Okay, so we're looking under the tender now. This is going to be where a lot of the hard wiring is going to happen. There's 4 screws in each corner of the tender. It's really interesting, the amount of detail you see under this locomotive. I mean, yeah, you got the water scoop, and you got one of the brake cylinders right there. And it's interesting that the copper pickups are actually touching pretty much the lip of the wheel. It's really strange, this model, in my opinion. There's a reverse snowplow. There's a snowplow as well in the rear of the locomotive, which is pretty cool. It also has some details as well, and there's a regular, Broadway coupler that came with it. Just not too much to it. It's hard to see the screws. They're under pretty much the outer 2 wheels near each end of the tender. They're under there. They're easy to reach, so we'll unscrew that and we'll look inside. Alrighty, now this is where all the magic happens. So right inside we have a Paragon 4 decoder. As you can see, there's a red and black wire that goes all the way to the rear headlight. And we got some pickup wires that are going towards the rear of the tender. And that pickup wire is for the pickup of the rear truck. And we got the tether, as you can see, up front. Again, you just got to look at the locomotive's PCB board once you have the shell of the locomotive off, and then you just have to compare it with the TCS WOW wiring diagram. And from there, it does seem intimidating when you do this, but if you know how to, cut wires and then, take off, just cut off the tube that basically covers the wires, so you don't short anything. You should be good to go when you do that. So in the next scene, we're going to start seeing some changes, and as well as scenes going forward where we actually get into this. A lot of it has been just explaining of what's going on, what's going to happen, and so on and so forth. So I hope you guys enjoy what's going to come next, and I'm going to go through some of the steps of what I've did and have some fun in this build. Alrighty, as you can see, I pretty much cut the wires from the JST plug for the right rail, basically the 2 gray wires that you see, and one of the wires is hovering over the flux. So what I'm going to do is try, shave some of that coating off of the wire and dip it into the flux so that when I put some solder on there, it's going to be nice and tinned, and it's going to be, pretty much stuck on there and look like a really good solder. So that's what's going to happen. There's some other wires, as you can see, that black wire that's not a part with, the JST plug that connects to the locomotive. That's also going to be twined with the front truck's gray wire for the right rail. So right now we're doing the right rail. Left rail has the black wires that go from each truck. So that's where those wires are going to go to, is going to go to the left rail. But first we're doing the right rail in this one. And in the next scene, we're going to see some more progress. Okay, in this scene, I have the red wire for the right rail to solder to the both gray wires and not just the gray wires, but also to pick up the JST plug that goes into the locomotive. So those are already hooked up to the 9-pin JST plug that's going to go into the TCS WOW decoder. I also have the black wire for the left rail to be soldered up and pretty much heat shrunk with the heat shrinking tube for the left side of the tender as well for pickups. So it's really interesting how this build goes. I know it's a mess, and you're gonna have to zoom in pretty closely to see what's going on. But again, this is part of the process. If you want, just pause the video, just zoom on in. So now I have the motor off of pretty much his mounting point. There are two screws. I could see the two holes where one of the wires goes under for one of the grounding points of the locomotive. There's two holes again under the locomotive that you can unscrew. And the reason why I did this is so I can take a look at where each wire individually goes to and follow pretty much the map that the breadboard goes to the JST plug that connects to the tender. So that's pretty much what we're going to see here. Alrighty, now it really looks like a mess. So as you can see in the tender, what we got is we pretty much got the wires hooked up more. I got the orange wire hooked up to the motor plus side, which is going to be on the left side, pretty much the 7th pin that goes into the locomotive. And then I also got the gray wire for the motor minus to go to the 2nd pin that also connects to the locomotive. And pretty much before I put the motor, again back down, I tested the locomotive to check for continuity, and as you can see, there's a red LED there, and so that's going to be a surprise for later on. I had some more thoughts of what I wanted to do next, so that's what's going to see soon. There is some wires that are no longer connected to the board that's above the gearbox. What I'm going to use with that wire is for the lighting and for other lighting functions. So we'll get to that in a bit. Alright, so I have the shell back on, and I screwed on some of those plates on there. We're still not done with the tender. I still got to hardwire the two purple wires that come with the JST plug that connects to the back of this decoder, that also connects with the Keep Alive capacitor that goes with it. So we'll do that in a bit, and then we'll close that back up, and yeah, we'll see what happens next. And we can see that pretty much the rear headlight's been hardwired. Black wire of the headlight in the rear is going to the yellow wire that's going to represent the rear headlight into the TCS WOW decoder. And as you can see, there's a 1000K ohm, not 1000K, I'm sorry, 1K ohm resistor that is connected to the blue wire that will go to the red wire that goes to the rear headlight, and then the black wire that connects to the 3rd pin that's going to go to the JST plug that connects to the female connector in the locomotive. And I added something inside the locomotive, and unfortunately I forgot to do a recording for that, so I will show you a surprise of what I did in the running part of this video. I hope you guys enjoy. And right there, ladies and gentlemen, is the firebox flicker that I added. 2 LEDs, one on each side, right next to the motor, before I close this locomotive back up. Isn't that really cool? I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and you guys have a good one. Thank you for watching.